Hey, welcome back to Emotional Mastery, where we are here to transform stressful, painful, fearful, difficult human experiences into your greatest potential. Now, today I want to talk to you a little bit about blanket statements in the mental health industry, right? They have all these generic tips, and then when you go to your friend for advices or your therapist for advices, you hear all of these statements and they tell you, just do it, right? And then they don't really show you how to actually work with the difficult experiences that you have, right? One of the few things that you probably just hear, that especially when you speak to your friends and your therapist maybe, is the saying that, oh no, you're going through something, you can't forgive someone, and then they just say, you know what, just let go, right? That person don't even deserve your attention and your love anymore. Just let go. Can't you see it, right? They will give you all those reasons why you should let go, but something internally inside of you, you understand that you should let go, but something inside of you is like, but how? But I can't, right? So there's all these generic terms that has been happening, or the people say, you know, just forgive, right? What do you mean by just forgive? And how do I actually go about that? And is it just, you know, appeal to the higher human nature, be a better person, bury the hatchet, you know, forget it, focus on the bright side, being optimistic, just be happy. Why are you thinking so much? And all these things, as much as we understand our pain, fear, and stress, but something inside of us is like, I'm not ready to let go. Now, why is that? Today, I'm going to show you 6 steps on how to actually, you know, work through those 6 experiences, which I what I call a 6 poison. And then how do you actually step by step move through those problems, those issues, those experiences with a certain mindset and then a strategy, and I'll show you how to actually unhook or ungrip the emotional tension that is there. Now, before I go ahead and explain all of this, please go ahead and subscribe, share, especially for those who need to listen to this information, right? And I believe this information is life-changing and transformative, especially if you find it really, really empowering and amazing for you. There are 2 things that I want you to do. Number 1, take whatever that you learn here and apply it to your life and really go ahead and experiment it for yourself if it actually works. Or are you just ingesting content passively, right? Number 2, if you find it that it works, it's amazing, please go ahead and share with your friends, please, because you don't want to keep it to yourself and you want everybody to understand what you understand, so that there's a connection over there and you have something that you can actually talk to, so you don't feel too lonely in your personal growth and in your healing journey. Because one of the signs of going through your healing journey and personal development is that you outgrow everybody around you, and then they don't understand you, and then you look like a freak, and then again you go ahead and re-experience the entire shebang of like what it means to be peaceful. So you want to actually involve those people around you in the community to join you. Right. So in my previous episodes, I shared a little bit about the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. Even if you knew something consciously, it doesn't mean that you're going to change, transform, and step into the life that you want to create. Because guess what? 90 to 98% of your experience in life is driven by your subconscious choices. And subconscious choices is driven by your emotions. And your emotions is basically, you know, repeating the same story that is charged with a feeling of a memory of a past that's hijacking the moment, especially when you're triggered. Different people, different place, different situation, different circumstances, and for some reason, same feeling, same experience, and it seems like you're going around in circles in life, in relationships, and you seem to be attracting the same situations and circumstances that match your internal reality, right? There's a saying that emotions is how we experience the universe, and the universe, because it's just energy, and emotions is energy in motion. And if you can shift the state of your energy inside of you, and that's when your external side of things, your things that you want to manifest, the outcomes that you want to create, whether it's your relationship, your work, your money, your health, will start to shift with you, right? So what I'm about to share is I'm going to share with you the common experience and share with you some pitfalls of what we do when we think about those things, those experiences that I'm about to share, and how to actually work around it so that your subconscious mind is on board to make the change and shift with you rather than this whole thing of just doing the right thing, right? Mindset shift where there's no deep energetic shift that can happen. So what you want to do as you watch through these 6 things that I'm about to share with you is to really ask yourself, how can the subconscious part of me be on board in this and to take the next step with me? Now, there are 2 things to think about when it comes to creating a process of change. Number 1 is to create trust and safety, right? If your subconscious mind is perceiving that change is creating more trust and safety, you are more likely to change. If you're forcing yourself to change, making this like a personal development project, you're less likely to change, right? You might change your circumstances. Maybe you earn more money, you find new people, and then you go to a different country and you travel and all those kind of things. You might change things, right? But internally, you still feel that same experience, right? Because until you can shift those things internally, real change can only happen when you change your energetic state. So number 1 is safety and trust. Number 2 is to focus on where you want to go, not what you want to get rid of, right? The biggest mistake that we do is to see ourselves as problems, right? And this is why we continue to perpetuate the problems, even though we have solutions to work on the problems. But because we are focusing on the problems, we are creating solutions that create more problems that really feeds onto the first problem that you have. So remember these two mindsets as you watch through the different things that I'm about to share, and this will actually help you to get to where you want to go at a quicker pace. And if you need additional help, support, and a person to help you move through this transformational journey, because I get it, trying to figure this all out by yourself means that sometimes you don't see your blind spot, but having a person to talk you through, move you through, experience through, especially for me who had this knowledge of understanding the subconscious mind, you're more likely to create a transformation that you're seeking at a quicker pace. All right, now, so let's go into the 6 things. All right, number 1, the common thing that really happened in our experience when we are in an emotional downward spiral is this experience of self-victimhood. Right? And the self-victimhood means, oh my God, something happened to me, poor me, something outside of me did something to me, and then you tell your sob story to your friend or to your therapist, hoping that they can give you some level of optimism, some level of like a new perspective so that you feel a little bit better about yourself. Now, most people are gonna agree with you because nobody wanna tell you the truth, but the only way to get out of this situation you're in is to honor the truth. Where most people, when they say, poor you, let me take care of you, you're so unlucky and so forth, they are just affirming your sob story, and then you're not gonna go anywhere because it's not gonna drive any behavioral change. And if there's no behavioral change, you're gonna make the same choices again, and then you're gonna stuck in the same pattern over and over again. Right? So what are the habits of self-victimizing, right? And what's the opportunity here when you're in this situation where you feel like something happened to you? What can shift? And instead of just telling and complaining about the problem and telling your sob story, what needs to happen as an antidote is to take self-responsibility. And the word responsibility splits into 2, the ability to respond, right? Means that when things happen to you, you're not just there, just fighting for the sake of fighting, running away from your problems from an avoidance standpoint, or freezing in place that you do nothing about it and then you procrastinate and then you don't show up to the problem. Will things change if you keep driving from that behavior? Of course not, right? But before you even go ahead and make a change on what you want to change, especially when things happen to you, means that it shows you what problems you're aware of. Instead of going into the solutions right away, can you just take a moment to really understand and shine more awareness and more light? Why did the problem happen in the first place? And this will not happen until you have self-responsibility. Now, the common experience of self-victimhood is this feeling of self-pity. I'm not good enough. I'm just unlucky. Because of my health, I can't do X, Y, and Z. My partner is the problem here, and I'm, unlucky to choose a partner like that. I have to be with him forever or be with her forever. And so all of those things are just petty excuses. And the common experience with self-pity is words like, I should have done this. I could have done this. I would if I do this. If only this happened. I'll try. It should happen. Maybe, can't. And all this languaging, right, neuro-linguistic programming, is telling you that you are continuously disempowered. self-responsibility is the beginning of self-empowerment, because you're saying that you're taking full ownership of what's happening around you and what's going on inside of you, and you go like, oh my God, how did I actually create this problem, right? Now, in a state of victimhood, our mind is in a narrow vision. We see things like everything's impossible. This cannot, there's all these conditions that's gonna happen. So one of the first steps that you actually need to do when you're in this state, by taking self-responsibility, is this: accept and observe where you're at. Understand that there are certain things that you can control, and then you need to really tune in and put your focus on what can you control. And then you focus on those things that you can control and let go temporarily, or ignore what you cannot control for a moment, and then take one small step. So my favorite thing when I work with people in this kind of situation, right, is not to give them solutions, advices, and figure out what answers that you need to be doing. What I love instead is do something called compassionate self-inquiry, right? When you have an issue, since something happened to you, it's way better to ask yourself a question rather than trying to grab onto those answers. Because questions lead to the unknown, and unknown lead into infinite possibilities, whereas answers are pre-recorded solutions that you have done in the past. So rather than chasing after solutions and answers and telling and asking someone to solve those problems for you because you think and perhaps you perceive that someone better than you can help you, my invitation here is to ask yourself a question instead, and ask this question: what is the one small step that I can take right now to empower myself? That is self-responsibility, right? What's one small thing that I can do? And then when you actually go ahead and do it, and please celebrate yourself. You've taken one small step rather than circling yourself in the same problem again and again and again. So the poison is self-victimhood, and the antidote is self-responsibility, as described as what I've said. And then use the process of self-inquiry, asking yourself powerful questions like what I said. What is one small step that I can take to get to where I want to go and empower myself right now? That will shift things. Right, remember, to get out of self-victimhood is self-responsibility, and self-responsibility means taking full ownership of the problem. Even if it did not begin with you, you take ownership anyway. All right, moving to the second poison, right? That we experience over and over again, whether we see it in others doing this to us, or we see it happening within ourselves and then we do it to others, right? So this is the blame, shame, and guilt. When blaming and shaming and guilt happens, it's revealing something that you probably have ignored for a while. And what it's revealing is that there is a hurt behind all of these behaviors, behind the emotions that you're having. Let's just say, you have unprocessed grief, and maybe perhaps you have lost something in the past and you have not really finished processing it. And then today, right, someone rejected you, you lost an opportunity, and then you got abandoned and you feel really painful because the unprocessed grief will again show up again. And what is really showing you is that it's telling you to uncover the hurt that has been buried inside of you. Now, you might see that those are completely two irrelevant events. How is it connected? Yes, from the conscious mind perspective, they are two completely different events. But if from the subconscious perspective, they are the same. Now here's the thing. I think Carl Jung have said this. Until you can make the subconscious conscious, your life will run its own way, and you make choices in its own way, and you call it fate. Right? I'm of course paraphrasing. Right? Again, the same thing is that if you do not really see the connections of like what's happening right now is related to some aspect of your past, of an unresolved hurt, then you're unlikely to find the solution and make peace with the hurt that is there. In fact, you can psych your mindset yourself over here. Oh, I gotta forgive them. It's okay, I'm all over this. I'm an ethical person. Let me be the higher person. Do that all you want. Deep down, if you do not attend to the hurt that is living inside of you, you will never move through it. And this is why most people fail to forgive. They say, yeah, I forgive you, but I'm not going to forget what you did. And that means you have not really forgiven. And let me redefine what forgiveness is. Forgiveness is the action that you take, conscious will to take the action is a choice to free yourself from the circumstances from the past. It has nothing to do with whether that person deserve it or don't deserve it. If you continue to look for justice, you'll never find justice because you are trapped in the emotional attachment to the situation circumstances because you have an unresolved hurt that you have not dealt with in the past. And when something happens to you and you go into the blame, shame, and guilt, rather than going into that direction, you need to pause and ask yourself, what's the hurt that I can actually deal with? Because until you free yourself from the hurt of the past, you can never really, truly forgive. And this is why a lot of us, even though, and I experienced this for myself, I forgive you, I forgive you, I forgive you, to my parents, to my friends, to the people who have hurt me in the past, no matter how many times I've said that I wanted to do it from a place of intention, I still feel the anger, rage that leads to blame, shame, and guilt. So obviously the antidote here is forgiveness, and I've already alluded to that. But what does it mean? What does it take to forgive? Right? Have you guys ever asked that? In all the spiritual teachings, they say, hey, just do a forgiveness, just do this practice and you forgive them forever. And I've done those, I still feel pretty pissed off about what they did to me. Right? That could happen, right? So I have a really powerful question for you on how to actually begin the process of forgiveness. It has to do with connecting to the hurt that's living inside of you. So here's the question. How am I in pain? And how can I love my hurt and not make it about other people? I'm going to repeat that. How am I in pain about this situation or circumstances? All right? And how can me, love my own hurt and not make it about others? Now, the beauty about this question is that, like the first one, you're taking full ownership of your pain and you're building a relationship with it. You're listening with it rather than seeing it as a problem to solve. And from there, you'll find that it's actually not there to victimize you. It's there to show you how to create the behavioral change, the mindset change, or perhaps stepping into a different identity that you have not owned, that is super authentic to you, so that you can grow and become whole, to become the person that you want to be. So it's extremely important that you ask this question, because where the hurt is, where the wound is where your gifts are. So on hindsight, actually the pain and the hurtful feelings that you're experiencing, rather than going to the place of blame, shame, and guilt, is actually revealing your next level of growth, your next level of evolution towards a more loving, peaceful, and free life. Isn't that amazing? Right? So moving on to number 3. The poison of complaining. Now, this is one of the most addictive behaviors we can participate in. And you might be surprised that we can be addicted to food, we can be addicted to pornography, we can be addicted to smoke, to substances, to alcohol, to work, to shopping, and so on and so forth. But the reality is that because of the way of the neurochemistry works in our brain, we can be addicted to emotions. And the way we are addicted to emotions and the way we play out in our life is complaining. And usually complaining comes with a lot of resentment, frustration, anger, bitterness, and the part where your needs are not met. And you assume that the world is just gonna give you in a silver platter, hand it to you, that all your needs are gonna meet. And complaining is this part of you that is perpetuating this sense of scarcity, a sense of disempowerment, and then really just shouting within you is telling you you have needs that you have not met for yourself, and you got to take self-responsibility to actually fulfill those needs. But if you do not stop and listen to your voice of complaining, because it's really feedback rather than a bad behavior, you wouldn't know where to look at, what needs you need to fulfill, what actions and behavioral change you need to make to get to where you want to go. So complaining really disempowers you, all right? And what happens when you complain, if you really tune in and really experience the moment when you start complaining, instead of having a wide angle vision to look at everything from a place of, peace, slowing down, bird's eye vision, what's really going on here, you are so focused on that problem, right? Remember that colleague, that co-worker that is just behaving in a certain way, right? And you just couldn't stand it, and then because you weren't able to have the conversation with him to tell him off or to communicate your needs and so on and so forth, and then when you go back home and you tell your wife and you tell your husband or you tell your other co-worker about the problem, when you can actually address the problem on hand in the workspace, right? And so on and so forth. I'm just creating a relatable scenario here. And the thing is that we rather avoid confrontation and perpetuate complaining. Now let me share with you from a neuroscience perspective why complaining is bad. Not just from complaining as you speak, but complaining in your head, in your mind. Oh, this did not happen, why this happened, blah, blah, blah. This goes on in your head, and this is why the Buddhist and the Zen tradition calls this the monkey mind. The more you complain and the more you allow the complaining to happen, whether by thought or by speech, you are actually enforcing the same neural pathway in your brain to continue the same synapses, right? To think about the same issue over and over again. Meaning, if you continue to do that, you're creating the same emotional experience in your body internally, which create a cascade of biochemistry that happens that is toxic for you, and eventually it perpetuates the chronic inflammation, the chronic problems over and over and over again until you actually stop it. So again, it's not a bad problem, it's a feedback, right? And what usually happens when we're complaining is that we're so obsessed with the problem. And we're so obsessed that someone needs to solve it for us, and we're not taking self-responsibility to resolve it ourselves. We assume from a place of entitlement that someone's going to hand it over for us. So what needs to shift right here is to practice gratitude. Again, generic advice, right? You obviously have needs that are not met, and then, things that you already have, and then you're complaining and your friend, your partner tells you, oh my God, you have so many things, why are you so focused on that problem? You should be grateful. How does that feel in your nervous system? And again, you understand it. Yes, I know I should be grateful, but there are things that I'm not accepting. There are things that I don't agree with. There are needs that are not met. So how do you actually go ahead and do that to create safe and trust for you to be in a place of gratitude again, rather than, getting lost in the problem itself? How do we actually practice gratitude, right? Number one, yes, please, as you're complaining, please listen it from a place of observation, from a non-biased witness because behind every complaint is a need that is not met. By all means, go ahead and figure out what those needs are and please go meet them. And when your needs are met, then the second thing that you need to do is to focus on what you already have, what's already working. So often than not, we have so many good things that's happening in our life. But for some reason, because of our negativity bias of our mind, we go pick on those one or two things that is not working and we make the whole world about it, right? So if you understand that you have such a behavior, number one, go fulfill those needs. Number two, start focusing on the things that you already have and create genuine gratitude, like building a relationship with that. Because until you have genuine appreciation for what you have and who you are and what's really going on that is doing well, it's almost impossible for you to just be at peace with the things that you're complaining about. So the questions I will ask here is two, right? What are needs that are not met that I need to go fulfill it by myself and not expect others to do it for me? Number two is, how is what I have right now in front of me a miracle of life? So often that all the ordinary moments is one of the most beautiful moments in life. But because we're so distracted and so busy with the things that we don't have, the grass is greener on the other side, we cannot see and appreciate what we have right in front of us, right? And when you can start shifting your perception to what you have, and then with all the things that you lack, you take full responsibility to go meet those needs, subconsciously, you create safety and trust. And number two, you focus on where you want to go rather than what you want to get rid of. right? Rather than being problem-oriented, you start to become more solution-oriented. And this is where creativity kicks in, imagination kicks in, and that inner peace that you have, or because you know that you're safe and and things are trustworthy, you have more faith in life. This starts to drive in more grateful things into your life. It's kind of like creating a field of attraction. And this has been in the studies, right? Creating something called heart coherence and brain coherence. What can happen next is that you start attracting good things in your life because you start seeing and focusing on the good, right? Remember, the more you complain, the more you get what you're complaining about, and the more you're grateful for something, the more grateful things that can come into your life. But do not bypass it until you actually figure out what those needs are. Number 4. Poison number 4 is being judgmental, right? Some people say that being judgmental is a good thing. Yeah, it could be, right? Because it shows you, right, what you need to pay attention to. It actually keeps you safe. But there's a difference between being judgmental and being discerning, right? I think there's a very different tone to it just by listening to the words. Because judgment seems to have a heavy assumption on someone or drawing quick conclusions about something, and just to fit into your limited belief and worldview. And this will continue to create and perpetuate your problems that you have in the first place because, right, we perceive what we believe, we don't perceive the truth. And there's a saying, you will only attract what you judge until you stop judging what you attract. And I put up my hand first because I'm prone to judging. And I can't count how many times that I've been humbled by life because I have an attitude to pursue the truth, to inquire into my assumed judgment and conclusions, to find out that I was always wrong. And sometimes judgment also comes with a huge emotional need to be right. You guys have those people in your life? That sometimes you're in the table of conversation with people, you guys are really not discussing things, and people are just being argumentative for the sake of being argumentative, just to prove a point of view or a belief that you hold so strongly about. And we all know that every belief is emotionally charged. It has an emotional component to it. And it makes me wonder when I observe such situation, are people having conversation, or are they actually just talking at each other, proving each other's point of view, which is kind of like, you're not building connection. In fact, it's very disconnecting, and energy doesn't lie, because on the nervous system point of view, it just feels uncomfortable and people don't really want to talk to each other at that point, right? So the thing is that why do we have strong judgment and beliefs? And here's my hypothesis, and my smart guess, please go and reflect it in your own life. And the reason we have all these strongly beliefs because we believe that these beliefs are protecting us from a hurt that we don't want to know about, right? Ignorance is bliss, and truth sometimes can hurt, but the good side of truth is that when you continue to inquire into the truth rather than assuming certain conclusions right away, is that it liberates you. So being judgmental is really not serving you. And sometimes when I work with certain clients and they have these strongly tied beliefs that they hold onto, and sometimes they're just saying just to prove themselves, and they're super activated and triggered, which has like nothing to do with me or the conversation, and they're trying to find evidence to prove that they're right. And here's what I do with them. So if you have a friend who's complaining to you about certain judgmental things that they want to talk about, and it feels draining for you and your nervous system, you feel so uncomfortable and disconnected, here's a question that you can ask them. Hey, would you rather be right now and to be listened to? Or would you rather be effective and let me show you and reflect you the truth? Please write that down somewhere. Or rewind to really read that all over again. Because when we are in it, we don't know we're in it. And this question is a pattern interrupter of the subconscious mind. And by the way, this is why I interrupt my clients sometimes, is so that they don't reinforce the belief that they already have. And this is such a powerful interrupter so that you know how to show up to someone rather than jumping into the unsolicited advisor, right? You just, let me just tell you what to do. This is what you're not seeing. And the more you try to go ahead and come forth with your own advices about what they are not seeing about their blind spot, then you're being judgmental too, and then you're starting a war between two people about who's right and who's wrong. Right? So what needs to happen here instead of being judgmental is what I call, and I've already shared this, is what I call compassionate self-inquiry. Let me break this down. When I say compassion, I'm not saying that be kind and be loving to yourself. Yes, that is part of it. But part of being compassionate is really about revealing the truth, right? And revealing the truth means that it's not about who's right and who's wrong, but a discovery of what is, right? And this is why in the Buddhist practice, and this is where I've been trained multiple times, we go through two different types of meditation. Number one is shamatha, right? Which is really about calm abiding, and you just sit there so that all of your charged emotional feelings can finally wind down and your nervous system can start to re-regulate itself, and you can be in a state where you can observe well, right? And then the second step is the vipassana meditation, which is what we call insight meditation, which cannot be done without the first one, where you go into a meditative state of really inquiring through witnessing what is going on in your life. Why do I behave this way? Where is it coming from? What does it mean? What do I notice that's happening right now? Why when a person X say A, B, and C, I have these feelings. Where is it coming from? All of this kind of like compassionate inquiry, asking yourself good questions, get you out from the judgmental space. So if you're leading someone out of judgment, ask them a bunch of questions. Test their beliefs. Open the conversation rather than just fighting opinion with opinion, right? And if this is between you and yourself, right, then have those process of really journaling yourself by asking yourself the right questions. At this point, asking the right questions is way, way, way more important than finding the right answers. So the question that you can ask yourself when it comes to being in this space is this: what is the good here or the truth here that I'm not seeing? Right? Because when you're judgmental, you will only see one thing in a certain way. And the invitation here, that's an invitation, is to discover the truth that I'm not seeing. Is to assume that maybe I'm wrong. And that in itself opens up the heart, opens up the brain, opens up your vision, and eventually you're more receptive for more information to come in to discover the truth. Because sometimes you won't uncover the truth right away, but because you're now open and more receptive, you're more exposed for more information to come into your brain, into your heart, and now you have more information to make the deduction and the discernment that you need to make. Make sense? Right. So, poison number 5. Things that we get stuck with perpetually is fear and doubt. Fear and doubt. And this is a big topic because I meet so many people with imposter syndrome, self-doubt, low self-worth, I'm not good enough, even though they are like highly professional, successful people. And it doesn't matter how many certifications that you got, no matter how much numbers of revenues that you create, how many impact that you do in the world, how much of a champion that you are, fear and doubt kicks in, and then that could really test a person's performance. And you see this in many professional athletes, even Olympians, right? When they're in there and you'll see between two athletes which one is in a state of fear and doubt and which one is in a state of flow, right? And here's the thing, right? Fear and doubt is a matter of perception. It's a matter of perception where you believe that you lack, that you're unable to do, that you're not good enough, that you're missing some skills, capability, or familiarity, right, about what's going on. Fear really reveals two things. One, you're in a state of unknown, that this is unfamiliar, I've never seen it before, and that's healthy fear, right? And the unhealthy fear is that when there's no danger, you assume that everything is danger. The unknown is danger. Just because it's unfamiliar, there's danger. Because fear is supposed to help you sense danger and keep you safe. But when it's enforced by this neurosis in your head of what happened in the past that you were fearful about, and you're projecting into the moment, and you're not being in a place of curiosity to find out if the fear is actually true or not, and you just assume that it is not, it is true or not true, and you draw a quick conclusion and then you back off out of it, then you have missed opportunities and forever you live in your comfort zone in a bubble, right? And this is why the common experience when people have it full of fear and doubt is that, oh, I'm going to prepare myself, I'm going to have X, Y, and Z before I take another decision. I need to have enough money, enough time, enough attention, enough, energy, then I can do the next thing. Or, let me finish my learning, then I'm going to do my action. Why? Because you fear failure, you fear that you make a mistake, fear that you're not good enough, or being ridiculed. Maybe there's a shame aspect to things. So those are fear that is like pressing the brake to the pedal that you're trying to move forward with, and eventually it burns you out. Preparation is not overthinking. Preparation is not also just sitting there passively, right? Preparation also involves taking action, trying out new things, taking some risks, and seeing all the failures as a stepping stone, as a feedback on what you need to realign to where you want to go, right? And also for you to demystify any things or any concepts and theories that you have learned, right? To see if you can have a direct experience of what's going on. The moment when fear and doubt disappears is when you have a direct experience of the event that you are actually moving into. Because once you experience something and it's not as scary as you think it is, the fear dissipates, right? The fear only dissipates when you actually do it. And that makes sense, right? Until then, your brain cannot comprehend and will always use the data and the memories from the past to inform the unknown. And to me, that is unfair to yourself because you wouldn't give yourself the chance to actually go try it out. So the solution here is you'll notice, people will say, just go do it anyway. Just take action, just do it and have courage, which is kind of true, but again, it's like, how do you actually do it? Right? So over here, the antidote is courage and bias for action. Many of the most successful people are not always the smartest people. And because they're not as smart, they are the people who compensate for hard work, action taking, and this is why they're successful. And this is an interesting paradox because now that when I work with smart people and then they usually have a lot of credentials and PhDs and stuff like that, you'll find that they are the people who are not biased for action, and this is for that reason their intellect, their intelligence have gone against them. They are forever preparing, they are always finding the right theory, planning, scheduling. A lot of them are planning the work and not doing the work, and this is why they're stuck at where they are at. And some even worse, and me included. Sometimes when you do the learning, you think the work is done, but that's just half of the equation. Learning is just half the equation. Doing the work and implementing the learning is the second half. And the only way you demystify the fear is to actually go and do it and experience it, to participate fully, and to really see that your failures, your mistakes, the things that didn't go well for you is stepping stones, feedback for you to get to where you want to go so that you can change and shift. Learning is in the doing. Clarity is found in the doing. Not sitting there, contemplating, preparing, because it's never going to go anywhere. For this to happen, right? And this is where the how can you actually practice courage? By the way, this is a skill, not a trait. Is to embrace vulnerability, right? Is to practice the muscle of vulnerability. And courage doesn't happen without vulnerability. And vulnerability means this, and it's defined by Brené Brown, who actually studies this topic extensively, right? There's an exposure to emotions, there's a risk, and there's an uncertainty, right? Courage can only happen when there's vulnerability. So if you want to be courageous and you don't want to be paralyzed by fear and doubt, have bias for action and embrace the vulnerability. There's even a saying called vulnerability hangover, right? It's that when you do something and then you kind of regret it, or there's some shame, and then you still kind of hype over there, and then you go I could have done it better, and so on and so forth. That experience, don't make it wrong. Really just appreciate that experience and then focus on the next thing. And really understand that whatever that you do on the outside is not a reflection of who you are. What you do on the outside is not a reflection of who you are, and you have this space to actually practice, play, and not take things too seriously for a moment. And when you can have this experimental attitude, right? Understanding not everything in the world works in the right or wrong way, then you're more likely to be more courageous, right? And eventually when you build the muscle by practicing this over and over again, kind of like posting on social media with a video here, and that's kind of awkward for most people. But the more you do it over and over again, it becomes a norm, and it starts to feel like the fear is demystified in your brain. Make sense, right? And the only antidote to really work through this is really just take those action. Just really jump down, and you figure out as you go, and then from there you're able to have more self-trust. Last but not least, poison number 6. Can the guy see it? Right, is addiction in itself and the behavior of procrastination. I think they come together, right? I think when we have addictions, means that we have a hurt that we can't cope, so we find coping mechanisms to deal with it. It's like temporary solutions that have long-term destructive consequences. That's what addiction are. And it's usually trying to avoid a certain pain or certain wound that you're stuck with, right? It provides short-term relief, right? But definitely it comes with a price. And it's kind of insane because our entire market, our entire business and our society is selling things like this to help us cope with addiction, but has long-term destructive consequences. From my perspective, and understanding what this symptom is trying to tell me is the rejection of who you are. Meaning that you are made to believe that there's something wrong with you, that you're made to believe that you are lesser, that you're made to believe that answers, solutions are outside of you. So we go into the place of addiction and a place of procrastination to avoid ourselves, because it's too painful to be who we are. And that's kind of like a sad thing, you know. And when I think about people who are struggling with different type of addiction, is that there's usually this sense of helplessness and hopelessness, and to a point there's so much self-hatred and shame that they have within themselves for doing the activity in itself. But what I can see is that people with addiction is those people are crying out for help, crying out for love, crying out for, you know, a desperation to be human again, because they're so lonely, disconnected, pushed aside, frowned upon, and they don't fit in, you know, into the place because they have to sacrifice some sense of their authenticity for the world. So when this happens, to me, that's usually a reflection of that. So how do we actually work with that thing? There is a practice in Buddhism called metta, M-E-T-T-A, and they call it loving kindness. And loving kindness is really, to me, the beginning of self-acceptance. Right, I'm going to put here loving kindness. And there's actually meditation around this. And I also want to say that sometimes addiction is just not this one thing that, you know, we tend to paint the picture of an extreme addict, right? Usually with drugs or alcohol, right? But I think everybody has addiction to a certain degree. And to me, the addiction is avoidance of the self. And the antidote, of course, is to self-accept. Is to start seeing yourself as a miracle of life. You start seeing that that there's enoughness in you. To start seeing yourself that you're a divine being that is worthy and deserving of anything without needing you to prove yourself. Of course, that's not what the society say, right? And when you are in a state of loving kindness, right, that's when the self-regulatory system of the body, the homeostasis, starts to kick in. I truly fundamentally believe that you cannot go through anything for a long period of time without self-acceptance, because at some point you're gonna crack. You're gonna feel like, you know, enough is enough, you can't do it anymore. And rather than checking out to addiction or procrastination and avoiding yourself, my invitation is to focus on yourself. And this is why most people avoid self-care. They know that they need to work out at this time, they go schedule in a client in there. They know they need to show up for a class that is for their well-being, right? And then they say they have more important things they need to do in business. All right, and so on and so forth. We find so many reasons to avoid ourselves, and we stop seeing ourselves as the centerpiece and the masterpiece of life. And would you agree with me that we are central to everything that we are doing in life? And addiction and procrastination is avoiding all of that. So when you can pause and stop, come from a place of self-acceptance, it starts to help you to move through the challenges in life rather than avoiding them. It helps you, it shows you like, okay, where can I ask for help? What is one small thing I can do? How can I just show up fully even though when all I have is 2% and 3% of energy? And loving kindness is really coaching and mentoring yourself, to encourage yourself that you deserve love, number one, and number two, to boost a little bit of that willpower of yours to do things that matter. I think if anybody suffers an addiction, it's an invitation to come home to who you truly are. And it starts with loving kindness. So here's what you can ask yourself. How can I show up 100% at my 1%? The same way I show up 100% at whatever percent that you're in today. Meaning, the invitation here is to show up fully, right? If you're 50% today, show up 100% in your 50. If you have only 2%, then show up 100% in your 2%. And then communicate to your partner if you come home and from home and you only have 2%, and maybe they only have 1%, you just tell them, hey, I have 2%, and they tell you you have 1%, then can you develop some level of compassion rather than checking out into your addiction of scrolling or whatever, or procrastinating from connecting with one another. The invitation here is that when you can start to create self-acceptance, then the regulation starts to happen, and then more love and connection can start to kick in, and then eventually you start to build a greater momentum of trusting yourself a little bit better, loving yourself a little bit better, and challenges that comes your way will eventually be something that you're able to work through. Coming back to the fifth poison, I did not share the question, right? So coming to poison number 5, the question that you can ask yourself is, how can I feel the fear and do it anyway? And then always assume the best. What is the best thing that can happen right now as a result of my action? It's very tempting that in the fear of doubt state, we are in a state that we only paint the picture of our worst case scenario. So if that's you, what I will entertain you to play a game is to play the worst case scenario game. Is to ask yourself, when this worst thing scenario happened, what's the next worst thing? What is the next worst thing? What is the next worst thing? And what usually happens out of the game is this. You realize that your brain will come up with more and more ridiculous answer about the worst case scenario. And that will show you with some humor that you don't have to believe everything your brain is telling you about the fears that you have. And then maybe you can consider the positive side to balance it out with the worst case scenario. So this is the 6 poisons and the 6, dreadful things we kind of go through in life. And the invitation with all these different 6 poisons is that there's a solution, an antidote for it. Rather than being trapped by it, and rather than going back to the whole thing of seeing people and people giving you generic advices, right? My invitation is for you to try. If you're in any state, you notice that you have a habit of doing any one of these 6, is to choose one and work on one. And work it for a month to see if you can create any behavioral change about your complaining, blame, shame, and guilt, or self-victimhood, or judgment, or fear and doubt, and give yourself a fun experiment to try it out. Because the only way for you to know that if any of this thing works and if it's working for you is to actually go work on it, right? So I get my community to work on these 6 things over and over again, and this is what I also teach leaders in organizations and at home to work on these things, because if you want to lead others, you got to first lead yourself, and you got to work through all of these 6 poisons for yourself before anybody's going to trust anything that you're going to say or anything that you're going to do. So when you can really embody and practice all this antidote, what you'll notice that it helps you to navigate the turbulence and the chaos that tends to happen in our life, right? So with this, you understand that not only can you end the chronic pain, fear, and stress, right? You can also start being from a place of empowerment that you have skills to navigate through any circumstances, which help you bring you back to self-trust. Now, I know festive season is coming, and this is where it's a place of a trigger party for everybody. And I think one of these 6 things will actually help you move through this season with more grace, with more gratitude, with more joy, even while all the pain, fear, and stress and triggers are flying around. So this is what I call emotional Tai Chi, right? So that you don't fight life anymore, and so that you can truly embrace what's here and move through things more effortlessly because you have full control on your internal state.